Hi, if you're looking for greater hope, assurance, and confidence through the shifting sands of life, then join me on today's episode as we dig deep into the Bible to discover rock-solid truth for life and living from the God of the Bible. I'm your host, Scott Keffer. Hi, and welcome to today's episode. As always, for a deeper experience, you can go to the show notes and download the blank insight sheet. Fill in the blanks along with the group. Depending on how you're listening to this, there will be a link to the episode website at beholdingbibletruth.com, and a sheet with the answers is included as well. Enjoy today's episode. Well, how many say their lives have changed a bit with COVID and the continued extended lockdown? Raise your hand, you'd say they've changed a bit, right? One of those unexpected interruptions in life. One of the books we read from time to time in our business is a small book, fun and very insightful. It's called Who Moved My Cheese? Who Moved My Cheese? How many read it? You read Who Moved My Cheese? It's a great parable. It's a fun little story about cheese that gets moved and two mice who don't like it very well and who continue to go back to where the cheese used to be, and the two mice who have to move on and find the new cheese. So it's not very fun when life gets booted, if you will, or interrupted. Certainly when we have plans in place and things seem to change. Well, God seems to be very good at that, of interrupting our plans and our purposes with his plans and purposes in mind. And we're going to look at some different responses today. Everything from looking at God's intrusion into our life as upsetting our plans to uprighting our plans. Upsetting our plans to uprighting our plans. Because God reminds us that he is nullifying the things that are. He is nullifying the things that are. So we are in the book of Matthew. And we're going through a familiar story, of course. Been a Christian for a while. You've been through the Gospels. You know the story. You know the details. What I want you to do is put on a set of glasses as we go through this journey and take a look at the sovereignty of God as he shows himself to us through the Gospel of Matthew, the sovereignty of God. And so in this very first set of scriptures, these first chapters, he is revealing the proof of the Messiah and the proof of the fact that he is the sovereign king. So today we're going to look at Matthew 2, verse 1 through 12. Chapter 2, verse 1 through 12. So if we would stand out of reverence to God and his word. I'm going to read from the New American Standard. Now, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, Magi from the east arrived in Jerusalem, saying, "Where is he who's been born King of the Jews? For we saw his star in the east, and we've come to worship him." When Herod the king heard this, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. Gathering together all the chief priests and scribes of the people, he inquired of them, "Where is the Messiah to be born?" They said to him, "In Bethlehem of Judea, for this is what has been written by the prophet. And you, Bethlehem, land of Judah, and by no means least among the leaders of Judah, for out of you shall come forth a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel." And Herod secretly called the Magi and determined with them the exact time the star appeared. And he sent them to Bethlehem and said, "Go, search carefully for the child. When you found him, report to me so that I may come and worship him." After hearing the king, they went their way, and the star which they had seen in the east went on before them until it came and stood over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they rejoiced exceedingly with great joy. After coming into the house, they saw the child and Mary his mother. They fell to the ground and worshiped him. Then opening their treasures, they presented to him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned by God in a dream not to return to Herod, The Magi left for their own country to another way. The word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. So here we are in the Gospel of Matthew. No great detail about the birth of Jesus, like in Luke. Since he's a doctor, I guess that would make some sense, but no great detail. But just Jesus is born, right? In fact, in the past tense, now after Jesus was born, literally, it already happened when we show up in chapter 2. Jesus was born. So I'd like you to think about the sovereignty on display. That's the blank there, the sovereignty on display. Because again, at the top, the proof, you can underline the proof. These first sections are proving, if you will, the Messiah. He was born in Bethlehem, the ancestral home of David, founder of the royal dynasty and the legal royal line. Remember we said, right, this, if you look at the line through in Matthew here, we're looking at the royal line as opposed to Luke. The legal royal line through Joseph, leading back to David, son of David. So I put on there, and Jack knows this well. He reminds me of this all the time. The math of the Messiah. Having been a kind of a math geek, because I was a geek, introvert, loner, growing up, you know, and I liked math, right? It's amazing to me that you can be a mathematician and not be a Christian. I can't even imagine how you could be a mathematician and not be a Christian. So look around and see mathematically. I want to say we have a couple folks in our coaching program from Toronto, really nice people, you know. And he sends me, one of the guys we follow is a marketer named Seth Godin, and he has a blog post on the improbability of universal delight, that it's impossible to delight everyone, right? Which is his point. You can't delight everyone. And I sent to him the improbability of randomness becoming systematic. So when was the last time, I'll ask him, when was the last time in your office that things in your office came together into a system by themselves? In fact, where is there anywhere where things come together systematically by themselves? So all you have to do is look around and see the way things are systematically. Well, 700 years before Christ, Micah says that the Messiah will be born in Bethlehem of Judea. So the probability of that, I looked up these numbers, Jack. You probably know if I have these right. The probability of that one coming true is 2.8 times 10 to the fifth power, or 1 in 280,000. 1 in 280,000 to 700 years before this, say. And if 8 prophecies were fulfilled in Jesus, which at least 8 were, it's 1 times 10 to the 17th power. Which somebody said, if you took the state of Texas and you filled it with gold coins 2 feet deep, and you put 1 coin in the midst of it and mixed it around and said to somebody, I want you to go into the state of Texas, you have as long as you want, and find that 1 gold coin. That's the probability of 8 prophecies being fulfilled in Jesus. So improbable that it happened by accident. Of course, if probabilities convinced everyone would be a Christian, there is enough probability, but there is probability for his people. R.C. Sproul said the primary purpose of defending the faith is for believers, to strengthen your courage. So the fact that Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea is 2.8 times 10 to the fifth power. So even if you're not a math, you got to say that's a lot. Whatever that is, that's a big number. That's a pretty big probability. So I put on there, what's the probability that the Lord has your situation in hand? What's the probability that throughout all these generations, that you go back through this genealogy, that he connected everybody to the coming Messiah. I mean, think about all the details that happened over all of this period of time. And how do you have his hand on those? While people were making all their decisions, some good, some not so good, and some inherently evil and purposefully evil. All of this is happening at the same time over years and years and years, and here the Messiah shows up. Either it's an amazing coincidence, or our God has his hand of power over all things. And I think that's the hardest thing to get. But I think it is the footer at which you should build your faith. You should let your feet set firmly into the sovereignty of God. Without it, we're just flipping around in the wind. And as things seem to change more and more out of our control, I think you need to go back and look, where are my footers? Where are my footers? What's the probability? Not a single sparrow falls to the earth without his leave and his notice. What's the probability? That whatever circumstance you have, including the world and the insanity in the world, is the world insane or what? Yes, it is insane because it is upside down. So he comes to nullify the things that are the world system. He is turned, that's why he's coming. He's either going to upset or he's going to upright your world. He's going to upset your world or he's going to upright your world. And so I put in there, the reminder is that at a moment in time, at the eternally decreed right moment of time, eternally decreed. Eternally decreed. What does that mean? Not only before there was time, because we think about that chronologically. Like this happened at a point in time, and it did, but it was eternally decreed, which means it was to happen. He says, I speak and it comes to pass. I plan it, I purpose it, and who can reverse it? No one. It was eternally decreed, and I love this. But when the fullness of time came, fullness of time came, at the exact, eternally decreed, perfect moment. And so the world asks us, and our unbelief asks us, so where's God? And Scripture says our God is in the heavens, and he does as he pleases. And that's a good thing, because his will is good and perfect. We know that, right? He does as he pleases. He does as he eternally pleases. And I was thinking on Saturday morning, we get up in the morning, we have our coffee, and it's country gospel on Saturday morning for us. So we have a country gospel mix, and so we listen to country gospel, Alan Jackson and others. And there's a great version of "I'll Fly Away" by Keith Urban. It's a great version with banjo, and it's just a wonderful version. It's from a country gospel collection. And I was thinking that I'll fly away. How many like that? I'll fly away. One day I'll fly away. We want to leave this earth. He came to this earth. He came to this earth. I want out. I want to get out of here. He came. Isn't that mind-blowing? Why would the God? Why? How? What? And he came fully God and fully man on earth. It was the Father's good pleasure for all. The Father's good pleasure, the hypostatic union, which is a conceptual thing, right? God became man. The fullness of deity dwelt in bodily form. 100% God, 100% man. What? There's all the question like, how did he do that? But before that, our God would come to rescue us? You got to be kidding me. I'd have let us go. Like years and years and years of rebellion. You're on your own. No, he came to earth, fully God, fully man. And I put on there, Jesus, fully God and fully man eternally. He was not only here on earth at a time, but eternally. Love this in Luke 24. Is our God mind-blowing or what? So in Luke 24, it says, while they were telling these things, he himself stood in their midst and said, peace be to you. Oh, what? Jesus shows up. Peace be to you. They were startled and frightened, no doubt. There's Jesus standing in their midst. Like startled and frightened, freaked out, we'd say. They thought they were seeing a spirit. They thought they were hallucinating. He said to them, why are you troubled? Oh, Jesus, you're here. What? Why do doubts arise in your heart? Why? Supernatural. He has transcended. He stepped into the material world. The incontainable, the uncontainable became containable. What? Without being, still being uncontainable. What? See my hands and my feet. It's I myself. Touch me and see, for a spirit does not have flesh and bones as you see that I have. And then I love it. He says, have you anything to eat? He's eternally fully God, fully man. You have anything to eat? Like, what? They gave him a piece of broiled fish. You still like fish? And he ate it. What? Because I put on there, Jesus is fully God and fully new man. He's new. He's the new man. He's the second Adam. And he didn't come and just do what Adam didn't do. He did more than, much more than. We are now joint heirs with him. Is that mind-blowing? We're joint heirs with him? Like he took our sin and we got rewarded. What? He's created an inheritance for us. We share his glory. What? He's the firstborn among many brethren. He's the first fruits. He's the second Adam. Holy smokes. And he shows up and everything begins to change. A stir began, I love this Spurgeon, as soon as Christ is born. He's not spoken a word. He's not wrought a miracle. He's not proclaimed a single doctrine. While as yet you hear nothing but infant cries and can see nothing but infant weakness, still his influence upon the world is manifest. There's infinite power even in an infant Savior. There's infinite power. Infinite power. So he says to us today, why are you troubled? Why are you troubled? Same thing he says here. And why do doubts arise in your heart? He says, see my hands, see me. I'm real. I'm as real. No, in fact, I'm more real. How many read The Great Divorce? C.S. Lewis. So they get on a bus, the people get on a bus, and they're going toward a mountain. And as they get there, they become more, what do I want to say? The things that as they get closer, they become more solid and they become, right? All the plants and stuff seem to push through them. And it's a reminder that the reality is in the Lord. What is real and what is infinite and what is enduring is in him. Stir begins. So we see a spectrum of response. We see the Magi, wise men, more than three, likely exiled believing Jews, don't know for sure, who are waiting for the promised Messiah. They were astronomers, astrologers, scientists, magicians. And it says they saw the star and they followed. Don't know for sure how long they followed, but it was 300-400 miles on a camel. Now, I've never ridden a camel, but it's like that's driving, to the shore. It's like driving to the shore, from here to the shore. Let's go to the Jersey Shore on camel. Why? Well, there's a star. Hey, honey, we're packing up and we're following the star. Well, you know what? This harkens back to when he called Abraham, doesn't it? He called him out of Ur, go to a country which you don't even know exists. And Abraham obeyed. So I put in there faith in action, which is wild, isn't it? Sitting under the absolute sovereignty of God, God calls us to put our faith in action, to make decisions that cause us to change our course, to do something different, to change our daily life. Sovereignty sits over all, right? Man plans his ways, the Lord directs his steps. But we make choices about our steps. So it says they saw the star and they followed, and they came. They had a purpose. What was the purpose? To worship. So I put on there worship, action, worship. Come, let us sing for joy to the Lord. Let us shout joyfully to the rock of our salvation. Let us come before him with thanksgiving. Let us shout joyfully to him. Psalms. Sometimes I say to the Lord, a lot of joy in there. And sometimes I feel like, like grinding my way through, like shout joyfully to the rock of our salvation. For the Lord is a great God and a great King, he says, above all gods, in whose hands are the depths of the earth, and the peaks of the mountains are his also. The sea is his, and his hand formed the dry land. The depths, the peaks, the sea, the land, like everything. So he says, come, let us worship and bow down. Let us kneel before the Lord our God, our Maker, for he is our God, and we are the people of his pasture and the sheep of his hands. Are you bowing down in worship on a daily basis? Are you bowing down in worship on a daily basis? I always said I want a place in my carpet or on my hardwood floor where there's two little indents where my knees set on a daily basis. Sometimes it's hard to get up from the because things get stiffer, don't they? Or are you bowing down in worship? They came to worship him. Action, worship, giving. Says they gave. Giving, that's the third space. They gave. They offered him costly gifts. Gold. They didn't know this, but gold speaks of his royalty. Incense, his divinity. Myrrh, his death. David said, I won't offer anything that costs me nothing. Costly gifts. Costly gifts. People often say, should I tithe on my gross or my net? Larry Burkett said, depends on whether you want God to bless your gross or your net. And I said, actually, if you believe in tithing and you want to follow Old Testament tithing, it's actually 23 1/3% because there's two tithes and a third one that happens every 3 years. So if you want to tithe 23.5%. Otherwise, give graciously with a joyful heart. But they gave costly gifts. Those who look for Jesus will see him, Spurgeon says. Those who truly see him will worship him. Those who worship him will consecrate their substance to him. Of course, he says, I urge you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, to present your bodies a living and holy sacrifice. All of life, right? All of life. All of life. So think about that. What's one way you can grow your faith in action? Is there something that God is calling you to do these days? What's one way you can grow your worship? Bending your knee on a regular basis. And worship and confession. I don't know how you can go without confession. I don't know how you can get with the Lord and not confess. Because I can't enter his holy presence and not see my own. And then rejoice in the blood of Jesus every day. There's power, wonder-working power in the blood. Yeah, the precious blood of the Lamb. And then, what's one way to grow in giving? One way to grow in giving. Well, there was a spectrum of response. We see the Magi, the wise men, and we see Herod. Herod was troubled. It says Herod was troubled. Herod the king, of course he was troubled. an Edomite. He was appointed king of the Jews. He wasn't even Jewish. Wasn't even a Jew. He was appointed king of the Jews. Josephus said he was evil. He was relentless in punishment. He was unsurpassing in action against the objects of his hatred. And Augustus said, who was a Roman, said it's better to be Herod's pig than his son, which was a double slap against Herod because he had his wife executed, he had sons executed, he had many people executed, but he was supposed to be king of the Jews. What would Herod be doing with a pig? So it's like a double slap against Herod, right? Better to be Herod's pig. And so it reminded me, of course, he's king of the Jews. They don't like him. They don't listen to him. That the real king of the Jews, the real king, threatens every so-called king. And more importantly, every authority. And he threatens mostly our own authority. He's a great king. He's a king. I'm an American. I don't have a king. We left the king. What do we know about kings? Right? Grew up with the Marlboro Man. The Marlboro Man doesn't have a king. The Marlboro Man rides to the west on a horse. Does what he wants to do. What the heck? We're steeped in that. I don't even like the thought of a king. So when Jesus shows up, he threatens our own authority, doesn't he? Because we're all the king of our own, captain of our own destiny, king of our own kingdom. So, of course, Herod was troubled. In fact, it says everybody was troubled. Everybody. Wasn't that interesting? The chief priests and the scribes, they were troubled. Religious leaders, including, this is interesting, former high priest. This was the teachers, the religious leaders, the former high priest. What did the high priest have the privilege of doing? Entering into the Holy of Holies, literally into the presence where God dwelt. Spurgeon said they could tell where Christ was born, but they never went to worship him, right? Because they asked him, they knew the answer. It's written. It's written. They were indifferent altogether to him and to his birth. Actually, I disagree with Spurgeon. They weren't indifferent. They were troubled. It says they were troubled. What is this going to mean? What does this mean? Jesus overturning our apple cart. And he's going to overturn more than the apple cart. And he does for each of us, doesn't he? In fact, it says all the people of Jerusalem were troubled. Isn't that interesting? It says they were all troubled. Herod was troubled. It says in verse 3, and all Jerusalem with him. They were troubled. Why? What? If the Messiah is showing up, what does this mean? What's going to happen? I've got plans and purposes. He's threatened. It says all were troubled. And all he is a baby born. The baby born. All the people of Jerusalem were troubled. So I put on their testimony to the greatness of Jesus. What Spurgeon said. Jesus of Nazareth is so potent a factor in the world that no sooner is he there in his utmost weakness, a now-born king, than he begins to reign. I love that. Before he mounts the throne, friends bring him presents, and his enemies compass his death. So I put on there, here's the spectrum of response to this Jesus. Jesus, born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king. Now, after he was born, here it is. Everything from active hostility, because the hatred turned to active hostility. We're going to see how Herod responds. We're going to see how the leaders respond. So there's active hostility, troubled, hatred, active hostility. So I put over there, that's the world, underline, that's the world system. Who's behind that? Satan. He's a murderer and a thief and a liar, and he has been from the beginning. Here's the amazing thing, because it's the same for me. Christians today are going, ooh, they don't like us. No, they not only don't like you, they want to kill you. Don't you understand? Jesus said, if they wanted to kill me, they will want to kill you. If they persecuted me, they will persecute you. If they send mean names against you, right? We were watching the Pittsburgh Penguins last night. There's no penalty for name calling. Oh, Christians want to go, like, call a penalty. They're calling us names. Oh my, they don't like us. They say bad things about us. Ooh, like, come on. Jesus said, they persecuted me, they will persecute you. We're confused if we think that the world is waiting for us, that the world system wants Jesus to be king. Doesn't. So that's the first, like, aha, this is what happened when he came. Why are we surprised it's happening today? John Piper said it's an anomaly, a 300-year bubble where it was confused. The world system should not reward being a Christian, where it was okay to be a Christian. In fact, it was even applauded in certain places. He's saying that's not the norm, and that is true. They were all troubled. They were all troubled. Then you can move over to indifference. And now we're sliding over to those who know him. Fallen away. Fallen away. Where are you? Stalled. You need to be rebooted. Going through the motions, which means you're doing the do, but it's kind of an empty, passionless, emotionless, joyless. Maybe you're active. Faith in action, worship, giving. Faith in action. So put a dot on there. Where are you? Put a dot on there. Where are you? Jesus. Now, after Jesus shows up, everyone's troubled. Where are you? Where are you? And so what I want you to think about is that truly, not just a dot, but where are you and where do I want to be? Where do I want to be the next week, the next month, this year? As things unfold, how are they going to unfold? I don't know. Here's what I know. Just as he was sovereign as king then, he's sovereign as king now. What will things look like? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Would I like to know? Yeah. How many would like to know? Yeah. So he says, I told you this before it came to pass, so that when it comes to pass, right, you might know. And then when he tells us, I think, I don't like that. I don't, no. I have some revisions here for you, Lord. Could you do it a little bit differently? So he's sovereign and king. So when you think about where am I, where do you want to be? Where do you want to be at the end of this year? Think about where do we want to be at the end of this year? Put that dot there. What's it say in Daniel? Those who know their God will do great exploits. Depending on which version you're in, right? Will rise up and take action. So I think that's what is the faith in action that he's calling you to take these days? What's the worship that he wants you to have? Lord, infuse my worship again. Love the prayer. Unite my heart to fear your name. Incline my heart to you and your testimonies. Pray for your heart, Lord. Infuse my heart with joy and passion to be with you. One thing I've asked, that I shall seek, that I might dwell in the house of the Lord all the days of my life. I pray that all the time. Well, you're giving. Lord, show me how I can give more. Give more. Faith in action, worship, giving. So Jesus shows up. We see a spectrum of response. We see that today, isn't it? Don't worry about the world system. Don't worry about the world system. It's going to do what it does because the prince of the power of the air is behind it. It's going to do what it does. And don't worry about what other believers are doing. Jesus said to Peter when he turned around, he said, what about him? Jesus said, you follow me. Don't worry about what the church is doing. He's worried, what is the church doing? What are you doing? That's what he wants to know. We walk with him, we don't walk. That's what he says to Peter. Like, don't worry about what all the other people are doing. Where's your faith in action? Where's your worship? Where's your giving? No matter what's going on around you, even in the church. So write down an insight and application. We'll share a couple. We're studying the sovereign eternality of his incarnation. Next week, we'll be studying and reminding the sovereign eternality of his resurrection. But may the Lord of all, the sovereign King, may he bless you, may he keep you, may he cause his face to shine upon you, may he lift up his countenance and grant you his shalom, and know him as the Lord of all. Amen.
Thanks for listening. I hope you have greater hope, assurance, and confidence in your life and a deeper trust in the God of the Bible and his Son, Jesus Christ. Until next time, may the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. And may the Lord lift up his countenance on you and give you his peace, his shalom in your soul and in your life. Until next time, may God bless you and keep you.